It's a family affair. I'm not going to sing anymore. I don't want to crack your screen, but it is a family affair. Hello, my fam. It is Perez, the queen of all media, the original influencer, and your number one source for everything. It ends with us saga. This video involves some of the characters in our supporting cast, such as sexual harassment Barbie's publicist, Leslie Sloan. The rep is a party in this lawsuit. Also featured in this video is Melissa Nathan, Justin Baldoni's crisis communications expert. She too is a party on his side of the lawsuit. And I mentioned Melissa Nathan just now. Filed into the court docket is a letter on behalf of Sarah Nathan, Melissa Nathan's sister. It just so happens that she is a journalist who works for the New York Post, and the self-appointed fashionista's publicist has subpoenaed Sarah Nathan. Understandably, Sarah Nathan is making a stink about it, just like that Daily Mail reporter did recently. So, Sarah Nathan has filed a motion to quash the subpoena. But why? I would think it's very relevant, no? Well, let's hear from Sarah Nathan directly. Sarah Nathan has worked at the New York Post for over 7 years now. She used to be the features editor of the Page 6 gossip column, but now she is an editor-at-large for the newspaper. It seems weird to even use that word, newspaper and online publication, the media outlet. Sarah Nathan is the author of a couple of very important pieces of reporting that ended up in this mess, such as this one that came out August 9th of last year. Sarah Nathan was one of the first to expose all the craziness that happened on the set of It Ends With Us. The headline reads, "Exclusive. Truth behind It Ends With Us feud rumors. Justin Baldoni made Blake Lively uncomfortable, sources say." Then just a few days later, Sarah Nathan wrote another article for the New York Post and their Page 6 column. And this one said, "Exclusive. Blake Lively approved final cut of It Ends With Us amid feud with co-star director Justin Baldoni." There was a bit of an evolution of the narrative there in between that near week span. It went from "he made her uncomfortable" to "diva." Diva was before we knew expert extortionist. I'm in a good mood today. I'm mostly always in a good mood. I love my job still, and I'm so grateful that you are watching. You're viewing this now, and my videos is such a meaningful way of supporting. Thank you. After setting up their argument, bolstering up the importance of a free press, and reminding the court that news gatherers have privileged and protected information, they cite law and cases. Then they get into the nitty-gritty, saying, despite these long-recognized principles, on May 5th, the Sloan parties, her publicist, two of the defendants in this action, served a broad and unfocused subpoena on non-party Sarah Nathan, a professional journalist seeking wide swaths of confidential information and documents that Miss Nathan obtained in news gathering. They mention how these two articles happened because of her confidential sources that she had. And they allege the subpoena should be quashed in full because it seeks information and documents that Miss Nathan learned from confidential sources through news gathering within the scope of her work as a journalist. Information that is absolutely privileged from compelled disclosure under New York's Shield law. Nothing more is required to grant Miss Nathan's motion to quash. Further, even if the court were to hold that the information is not confidential, and it is, The qualified privilege of the Shield Law also demands that the subpoena be quashed because the Sloan parties cannot satisfy the high burden required to overcome the privilege. They also argue that the materials that Leslie Sloan is seeking are not critical or necessary to the Sloan party's defense and can be obtained from other sources, including other parties to the underlying lawsuit. Direct parties to the lawsuit. Once again, Leslie Sloan is trying to circumvent the process. Very Van Zan sham lawsuit of her. For many of the same reasons, the Sloan parties cannot meet their burden to overcome the reporter's privilege under federal law either. In short, whether analyzed under New York or federal law, the Sloan parties cannot pierce the privilege, and the subpoena should be quashed in its entirety. Moreover, this... I love legal magical words that only lawyers use, such as, moreover, this blunderbuss subpoena, pause. Blunderbuss is a short muzzle-loading firearm with a flared muzzle. Who the hell uses that word? No. Moreover, this blunderbuss subpoena is facially overbroad, seeking all documents and communications relating to, among other topics, the film and many of the parties to the underlying action. Such a subpoena places an undue burden on Miss Nathan, particularly given the First Amendment implications. This provides an independent reason to quash the subpoena. Plus, she's not a party to this lawsuit. This really tickles me. I love that word, tickle. Everybody knows tickle. This really tickles me. Later on, do you know how they describe this mess? As the court is aware, this consolidated case concerns a complex factual dispute regarding alleged harassment and an attempt to I'm skipping a little bit. To destroy each other's reputations. And they specifically mention later on, Miss Nathan's sister, Melissa Nathan, is a party to this lawsuit. In contrast, Miss Nathan, Sarah, the sister, her connection to the film and the dispute among the parties to the lawsuit is solely through her role as a journalist. So leave her out of it. The reason Melissa Nathan's sister submitted the motion to quash today is because today was the deadline that the Sloan parties gave her to respond to the subpoena and hand over the information. This judge, does he get any time off? I predict that this subpoena process will probably follow somewhat along the lines of the Daily Mail one, where eventually there will be some kind of agreement to exchange information, but limited in scope. And perhaps not even giving over texts or emails, but instead making a declaration. Or the judge might just say, all right, motion to quash granted. The judge is probably so over all of this. Every day, there's so much. So, if you were the judge, how would you rule here? Would you go back to the parties to say, work it out amongst yourselves? What would you tell them? How would you handle this? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section.